voice on. Okay. Welcome everyone to the 54th episode of the Navigating Turbulent Times series, and today's episode is entitled The Pay and Prospects 2021. So this is in line with our recently launched, as of yesterday, our 15th Pay and Prospects salary survey, which many of you may have remembered the days when it was the salary survey. So today's episode, we're going to be talking through very top level what were the results on that. You can see a stellar panel in front of you at the moment, hopefully on your screens, but there's some pictures of the lovely people that are joining us today. For many of you, you may have seen me on these episodes before. I'm Peter Brogan, Head of Research and Insight at the IWFM, and I'll be hosting today's episode, but also taking you through some of the results, very top line results from the report, just to give you a flavour of what the Pay and Prospects was telling us this year and in previous years. So I'm really pleased to be joined by a stellar panel that as part of today's session is to give a bit of their own opinions, their own experiences and their current views on the profession in terms of not necessarily pay. Yes, we can talk about that, but the prospects and opportunities in the fascinating profession IWFM represent, but more importantly, how these individuals currently work in that profession and the sector respectively. So I'm just going to go through the panelists as we see there. I just want to put a caveat. We have got Peter Forshaw, who's having a few connection issues. So Peter may join us and may not, but I will keep an eye on that. So on our screens there, and hopefully you can see him, I can see him, is Conrad Dismore, International Operations Manager, ISS. So Conrad, for the audience today, it'd be just great to give you a little bit of introduction about yourself and your background in the world of facilities management. So Conrad, good afternoon.
Thanks, Peter. Afternoon, everyone. As Peter said, I'm an International Operations Manager at ISS in London. I've been with ISS now coming up to 6 years, where I joined straight out of university. FM for me, luckily, was a career of choice, which everyone finds quite strange. And I entered into the industry through ISS graduate trainee program, which gave me quite an array of opportunities and projects to work on. I've held positions from data analytics, senior project management, and now into international operations. I was lucky enough to win the Newcomer of the Year award in 2017. And soon after, I joined the Rising FM Special Interest Group, where I've been for 3 years now, or just over. The reason I'm glad to be speaking here today and to be part of the Rising Group is I'm quite passionate about broadening the opportunities for young people in the industry. I think we should put more responsibility and accountability on the young people coming through, because they have the capability to do it. So I want to be able to push businesses and managers to show that we don't need 15, 20 years of experience, that someone with 5, 6 years can do just as good a job. So yeah, looking forward to answering your questions later. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Conrad, and that was a great intro. So, Ati, you've seen how it's done, no pressure. So good afternoon, Atia Khan, Senior Sustainability Manager at Mighty PLC. So good afternoon, Atia.
Afternoon, Peter. Thank you for having me along here, and hello, everybody. So yes, as Peter said, I'm a Sustainability Manager with Mighty. I've been working in sustainability for a number of years. And I have an academic background in sustainability. I did the usual route of going off to university. At the age of 13, I decided I wanted to be an environmentalist. I didn't really know what that meant. I kind of thought it meant joining Greenpeace and saving whales. And that was what I was really passionate about. It was back in the 80s though. So it was when we were more concerned about global warming and holes in the ozone layer. So it was a different type of environmental interest back then. We were worried about pandas and cute things like tigers and those types of endangered species. And I went off, I studied environmental management at university, but I didn't really know what kind of job I would land in afterwards. And I kind of finished university thinking, right, well, I'm an academic now, I've got these qualifications. Where do I go in terms of work, etc.? And so it was quite a steep learning curve for me actually to find that the industry at that time, so this is talking of maybe about 20 years ago, there weren't that many opportunities for us young environmental type graduates. Not all organizations were recruiting people back then. And I ended up working in construction and then ended up in FM by chance, really. And in my experience, a lot of people that kind of have ended up in FM with my kind of background has been by chance. We've wanted to be working on construction projects or for large organizations, etc. Ended up in the FM industry. And actually it's been a really exciting career over the last 15 years, working with so many different types of customers, both in the private and public sector, supporting them in terms of their sustainability and environmental programs. And the reason I'm here today as well is also because I'm really passionate about encouraging people from sustainability backgrounds into our sector and supporting them with a link between an academic qualification in environmental management perhaps, and understanding how you can apply that in the workplace and creating those opportunities. So I currently work with London University. I also part-time lecture there as well. And we're very passionate about encouraging those kinds of opportunities for young people as well. So yes, that's me. Thank you, Peter.
That's great, Atia. And yeah, a lot of that we'll be delving into today about the career of choice or career of chance as well. So about the prospects. So thank you for that, Atia. Peter, I know I did explain to the audience you had a few connection issues, so you might not thank me for that, but hopefully you can hear us and we can hear you. So we've got Peter Forshaw, founding and managing director, Maxwell Stevens. So good afternoon, Peter.
Peter, thank you very much for the introduction, and sorry for the poor internet connection. I'm in Europe at the moment. So I have been and set up Maxwell Stevens 15 years ago. I'm very fortunate to have dealt with over 350 different client organizations in that time. So we've got quite a unique perspective of what's happening during the but also meeting. Can you hear me?
Peter, we're still having a few technical issues, so I'm glad I did mention that now up front, because I think it's been proven that Peter may join later, but yeah, apologies that, guys. There's just a few connection issues this morning, but you'll be pleased to know the show will go on the road. Do not worry. So just to remind the audience, this is live. We've just proved it's live, haven't we? And it will be recorded. So I will encourage the audience to send in through questions. We have got a dedicated Q&A for our panelists, and as I say, hopefully Peter can join us, but we've got respectively, you've heard from Ati and Conrad and their experiences, and there's plenty that we can go through today with our remaining panelists if Peter can't join us. So I just say bye to Conrad and Atia now, but hopefully you will join us later. I'm just going to go through the paying prospects now. Just want to give a bit of background to our audience that may not be aware. I know some of you may have actually participated in the survey. So as you can see there, lovely front cover in my humble opinion. The report was launched yesterday. As I say, it's the 15th edition of the paying prospects, formerly known as the salary survey. And as this slide just articulates, it's really there to identify the trends in salaries, benefits, training and qualifications in the profession, and also explore how FM professionals feel about the industry. So particularly with that latter point, that's what we'll be discussing today on today's episode. And I appreciate Peter's rejoined us. So in terms of the paying prospects survey, you can see there, we run the survey in 2019 and 2021. You can see that the response rate increased quite quite dramatically in the sense of responses we received in 2021, and that's good. So the survey opened earlier in the year, 24th of February, closed at 19th of March, and really it was aimed at all our members to respond to the survey, because all our members are impacted by the issues that the survey was trying to cover. So just a bit of background about the profile of the people that completed the survey, and this is in the report, so we'll go through it just to give you a flavour today. Is mainly 4 in 10 nearly were middle management roles. Over a quarter were in senior management roles. Yes, we did have majority of males respond to the survey, and that's be something that I want to discuss with the panelists in respect to the diversity and inclusion debate that's on many board agendas, not particularly in FM, but many sectors up and down the country and globally, in light of how we make this a more diverse and inclusive profession. So 70% of our respondents were male, and a third of respondents actually hold an IWFM qualification. So in terms of some of the feedback we received, 54% gained more confidence from completing qualifications. So that well over half felt that was important around completing qualifications. Just under a quarter of these were from FM providers, outsourcing organisations, and 72% work within the non-FM organisation with in-house FM. So just a bit of a background on the makeup of individuals and the sample of who completed the survey. Now, on many of our surveys, when we talk about the workplace and FM profession, we asked this question in our surveys about how respondents working within an FM provider describe an outsourcing organisation describe their work. And you can see there that the majority, actually, well, 48% would say that their work is focused on managing spaces which people work in. So this is the whole workplace FM debate, with 35% believe that they're enabling work wherever it happens, and 70% neither of these resonate. But as you can see, that the gap is closing in terms of those that believe that it's wherever work happens. And that's really where today we're going to discuss, and we've discussed at length on previous episodes of NTT in particular, around the role of hybrid working and essentially the role of FM as we move out of a post-COVID world. I know we're not there yet, but respectively how the profession will evolve on the backdrop of some of these market forces such as COVID and Brexit has changed the profession and the needs of that. So we discussed that with respective panelists later as well. So just some key headlines. I've tried to use visuals. I don't want to bore the audience today with numbers too much, but just give you a flavour of what was coming out in terms that there was a third of the highest earners, earning 61k plus, have responsibility for a budget of more than 10 million. So shows the varsity of the scope of some of the members in terms of their budgets. One in 6 had worked in FM for 9+ years. 38% had reported no change in their pay in the last pay review. So obviously with those economic conditions and market forces, that may be a reason why, and we will delve into that later. And I appreciate some of the Q&A and comments coming from the audience to get your views on the results today. As I say, this is based on a sample of our members, but again, we do like the qualitative pieces and subjective pieces to come from our audiences as well. You can see there on your slides, 38% saw no change in their pay at the last pay review. So that was again echoed again. 41%, around 2/5 of respondents in 21 reported their last pay review resulted in an increase of 1-2%. So pay has been increasing but steady, and there is a significant increase compared with 2019 in terms of the resulting pandemic, in terms of the challenging times, in terms of the last pay review. So as I say, those market forces are having an impact on pay, and we're seeing that in the results. So respondents were asked what they like about working in workplace and facilities management. And this is something that I want to ask a couple of our panelists, but particularly does this resonate with the audience, that 66% thought about the variety and diversity range of the work. So how diverse the range of work is working in the industry. Like the results of their work, so job satisfaction in what they do. 18% enjoy the challenge, and I'm sure many people can explain the challenges they face on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis in terms of the profession. And the reasons why individuals felt that staying with their current employer for 6 months or more was the fact is that the good news is 37% of the respondents enjoy their job, which is always half the hurdle. If you enjoy something, then you don't see it as work, as many of us will resonate with. 27% job security, and again, in the backdrop of economic times, that's interesting to see. And 11% that their work is actually truly valued. So again, there are just some reasons, and there are more reasons in the report, but I've taken some of the top line analysis really for the purpose of today to give you a flavour and look at a rather in-depth report where this is cut by various variables and goes into a lot more detail than I'm presenting today. So reasons why respondents plan on staying with their current employer for 6 months or more: they enjoy their job security, the work is valued, again, repeating what I just said on the earlier side, but the salary remains the most important factor, but fewer respondents selected this than in previous years. So again, it shows that pay isn't always the biggest factor for people with job satisfaction and what they look from their career, basically. And there's some of the questions that I will delve deeper with the audience. And again, challenging and job security, again, just echoing on the previous slide, what were the major factors of why people were keen to stay in their jobs. So some of the key findings, if I could wrap up on here, many workplace and FM professionals feel there is a great deal of job satisfaction, and that came out in the results. And the challenging work that brings in terms of the people, spaces and facilities that they create and maintained. And that's really what our workplace and FM professionals were saying in the report. As highlighted, but very small percentages, some workplace and FM professionals had benefited from remuneration packages that closely linked to their years of experience in FM. And that's proven in the gradual creep, as I mentioned, in terms of pay reviews of 1-2% increases, with few seeing much more on that. But as I say, that may be the economic backdrop that we're facing at the moment. There's been an impact on salaries, with many indicating there's no change in their salary at their last pay review. Job security has increased in importance over the years, as well as the relationship with colleagues have both become more important. So that human element, the people element, that facilities management is paramount to an organisation. And location has been pushed down in the list of important factors in employment, and it is widely believed that home working or hybrid working, whatever term you prefer, will continue at much higher levels than pre-pandemic. So as we move into the post-pandemic world, there will be less workplace which they visit less often than previously. So there won't be an emphasis of being in the office or the respective workplaces 5 days a week. And that be another challenge that I'm going to propose to our panelists in terms of how that's going to shape the future of the profession moving forward. So as we all experience, and many of us over the last year plus and close to 2 years, in terms of the way we've been working at home and various different methods, is work-life balance has always been important, but probably been shone a light on it, and particularly the last year plus, as I said, in terms of where we've gone through the pandemic. And in terms of work-life balance is important to a third of responses, but challenging interest in work is cited as important by a higher proportion. So people are interested in the work-life balance, but also people want to be challenged and interested in the work they do. And this was underlined in the report. And I think there's a quote in the report that I've just pulled out for the purpose of the day, that no 2 days are the same. And I think that echoes many FM professionals up and down the country, that probably is their world, that they may have a plan, but sometimes they've got to be very adaptive to that plan. And I think employers need to stay abreast of what their competitors are in terms of remuneration packages. And we know in the service provider world, which we've got 2 service providers on the panel today, respective colleagues from them, it is a commercial and competitive world. So again, remuneration packages are interesting. And I'd be interested to understand from Peter's perspective as a recruiter, exactly how has those packages changed over time, and exactly what his clients as well as prospective employees are looking at when they're looking at an employer, and do some of these factors resonate. And what workplace and FM professionals value challenge and personal progress, and this will put them towards other opportunities. So that was coming out of the survey. But however, there was perceived lack of support for professional development, and that's something that's important for any individual. And also perceived lack of management support will drive job moves. So that was coming out of the survey, which was not to be too damning, but obviously a concern there for employers in terms of trying to retain staff and good staff. Employers need to be aware of these factors to ensure they retain valued staff. So it's just summarised in that sentence there. And I think in terms of the various things, no 2 days are the same, quoted by a number of respondents. So I've just basically repeated those elements in terms of what was really coming out of the survey, and they are highlighted in the survey itself at the back of the report. So before I move into your questions, I'm just going to move back to the panel, and hopefully I'll ask the panelists to join us. And as I say, I've just done a whistle-stop tour of the report, and as I say, re-emphasize some of the key highlights from the report. But I just want to delve into questions straight away, Conrad. From that perspective, was there anything there that you heard from the top line report that was a surprise? But if I can expand upon that, it's just understanding from your own perspective of how you got into the profession, and as I say, has any of those results there resonate with yourself from your own personal perspective or experience?
Yeah, I think seeing a few of them, it does reflect where I'm at and where I think a lot of my cohort are at and people that I speak to. I think I was quite lucky that my dad has an FM company in Ireland, and that's what I grew up in. So knowing I wanted to go into FM, having a rough idea of where I wanted to get to, has supported me. And I think ISS have been great in allowing me to jump between roles to progress. And I think one of the points that were raised around people want to be challenged, I think that's what my age bracket want more than meaning anything. We do get bored quickly. And if an employer can't give us what that next step looks like, people will want to move on. And I think from my cohort, I maybe see 70% of them in 4 years have had 3 different jobs. Now, all within ISS, but wanting to progress and continue to do that. So for me, I think that is a big thing. Yes, salary is important. I think if we look at people between the ages of 24 coming out of university and wanting to get a mortgage by the time they're 30, they're obviously focusing on what that salary looks like, but they want to go to work and be challenged. I don't think when I sit in the pub with any of my friends or colleagues that we talk much about salary. We actually talk about maybe boredom or not getting good challenges or not having an output from what we're doing. So I think that is a point that really resonates with me.
No, thank you. And Ati, if I can come to you, just as I emphasised, that was very top line, and the report goes into a lot more depth on some of the elements I've presented today. But from your point of view and own perspective, did any of that resonate, or was there anything else you wanted to add on what the results were telling us?
No, I think the results are really interesting. There is a few things like around the professional development piece. I was quite surprised to see that FMs kind of believe there's not enough support in the professional development area, especially because in my experience over the last 15 years or so, we're actually wanting to upskill FMs to have to take on more and more responsibilities around different areas. So there's more focus on things like statutory compliance, site audits. And as from an environmental perspective, we do expect FMs to have those conversations around sustainability and environmental management. and pick up on those kinds of things on sites as well. So I found that quite interesting, because you would actually feel from an outsourcing industry perspective that actually we're expecting FMs to be functioning at a higher level than we perhaps were maybe 10, 15 years ago.
No, thanks, Hattie. And Peter, to bring you in from obviously your own experience and in terms of working for clients as well as prospective employees, was there anything surprise there for you? I know Hattie's mentioned there about the professional and personal development. Is there anything from what you heard today that was a surprise from your perspective? Sorry, Peter, you're on mute, just to let you know. There you are.
So we've actually seen an increase of younger professionals joining the sector in the last period of time. It sort of goes against, but I think it's a difficult one in the sense of who responds to these surveys sometimes. I mean, are we encapsulating the picture of everyone? Are young people potentially too busy, too career ambitious to fill in these surveys? I mean, we've certainly done a few of these surveys ourselves, and it's a bit of a scratch the head moment to actually get people to the certain sectors which probably aren't represented, and it's a scratch the head moment to actually get them to fill them in future reports.
No, that's true. As I say, it's a sample base of the membership, and I think as an audience are sending questions through, and we'll encourage them to do so. That's why it's important to build on the report and get some viewpoint, because it is based on a sample of individuals. So the report did highlight some areas of gaps. And particularly we mentioned about young people and people within the profession for a certain number of years. I just wondered from that perspective why there might be fewer younger FMs at the stage of their career, and what key factors would ensure FMs continue their careers in the sector. So I guess it's a very broad question, but from your experiences, you're in the sector, you work in the sector. So Hattie, have you got any points on that you think would maintain a stronger base of people remaining in the sector?
I mean, I can't speak fully for all organisations, I guess, but sometimes there is an element of young people not actually knowing that FM is a career choice. So I know that you yourself, Peter, and your organisation does a lot to encourage that. But there is, we try to take young apprentices, etc., into the organisation and encourage career pathways as well. But yeah, it does tend to be, unfortunately, quite an aged population. So I think that's a challenge that all of us need to work on collectively to try and encourage young people into FM careers.
And Conrad, I guess from your perspective, following Hattie's point, you at the start of the webinar emphasised the fact you had first-hand experience through family around FM. How do you think we could entice more younger people into the industry and maintain them? I think the key from the survey was showing that there was a drop-off at a certain amount of years experience and people leaving the industry. So is there any thoughts on that would help with that? But our nature that there's never one career anymore. But I guess from that perspective, how we could entice people to stay in the industry for longer.
Yeah, I think it's more about how many young people in the industry classify themselves as FMs. It is the big question. If we were to take the large service providers and looked at the age range and quantities there, would they actually, if they're an accountant or in procurement or in supply chain management, are they saying, actually, I'm an FM? Or are they just saying, I'm in finance, I'm in accountancy? And do they want to participate and be part of the FM industry? Or would they just get up and when the time's right to move, they'll go to another industry but do the same type of job? So I think we do need to dive into maybe not focusing on, am I an FM, but focusing on, am I part of the FM industry, and looking at what the findings are there.
So Peter, I'd like to bring you in just with a different question about what employers are looking for in terms of skills. And I know that the survey touches upon skills to some degree. And how these skills have evolved over time. So as the industry evolves, from your experience to date, how has that changed from what your clients are looking for?
Well, I think the COVID piece has changed opportunities dramatically. Who would have thought that, you know, over 50% of the working population are currently working from home? So corporate real estate going forward is huge. Regional hubs rather than a central London office, for example, and workplaces need to adapt to, you know, new ways of working, new technology, new demands for the next generation coming into the workplace.
No, that's great, Peter. I think we got most of that. I know that's great. I just, on a personal note, I guess, Comrade Attia, how has your own skills evolved over the years? I know you've politely said you've been in profession for a long time, but from your perspective, and I guess this is more a personal question, how would you say your skills have evolved and what your respective employers have been looking for when we talk about skills? So it'd be good maybe just to get a personal perspective from you, how they've adapted or changed over the years. So Attia, is there anything you could add to that? From, I know it's a very personal question, but today is about showcasing people in FM.
Yeah, I think everything I've probably learned around sustainability and environmental management has, though I had that academic background, has mainly been on the job, to be honest. So there's nothing better than getting thrown into the deep end and trying to solve our customers' issues or our own issues, to remain compliant to some promises that we've made, or to find that best practice and those leadership opportunities. But certainly in the last like 10 years or so, we've had increasing emphasis around sustainability, and definitely in the last year and a half, there's been a huge explosion really in the word sustainability and customers' requirements now, and their embracing of sustainability objectives as well. Within our outsourcing agreements. So it has definitely changed. I feel in the last few years, there's been an increasing emphasis on actually understanding and appreciating professional accreditation as well. So prior to that, we didn't really see young graduates, you know, needing to put, oh, I have a BSc, by the way, or I'm a member of IEMA. But that's increasingly become something that has become more prevalent within the industry. And also within requirements as well from customers, we're seeing a need for us to perhaps put forward someone who is IEMA qualified, etc., within the environmental profession when we're designing our sustainability requirements for them.
No, I think you touched on a key theme for the Institute and the profession around sustainability. And Comrade, I'd like to bring you in on this as well as Peter around, as recent, we have got a Facilitate article around pay and prospects as featured respectively Comrade and yourself, Peter. And the role of technology was discussed and the impact, linking probably to the question I asked around skills. How has that impacted you personally, Comrade, this debate around technology? And Peter, I'd just like to ask you again from your own experience from clients when this role of technology we talk about and actually how it's changed the profession. So Comrade, I'd be interested to know from your own perspective, this word technology that is used, and we're currently using it today to do this webinar. How has that impacted you on a day-to-day basis, if at all?
I don't think personally it has, because technology is what I've grown up with. I think before we started this webinar, we talked about dial-up or dial-in. That was something I'd never experienced. I was always Wi-Fi and using my phone and being on a laptop and using apps. I think what I've always tried to push is technology, something to our generation that's second nature. But maybe the technical aspects of some of the hard services like engineering that we do, we don't have that experience. So companies should be looking at the generation that have the 20, 30 years of hard service experience, aligning them with the generation that has the technology experience and getting a solution that way. I think too many look in one pool and they think, okay, a young person can go in and deliver a technology engineering solution. We don't know the ins and outs of any HVAC systems. So we can't. And then they look at the older generation and say, okay, I put a technology solution in, and they don't. So I think the industry needs to look at how we better align those generations and take the skill sets that both have to get a better output.
Thank you. I think Peter, I see you're on the move there, and hopefully you can still hear us. How has that impacted your clients? This role of technology, as I say, that's been a big part of the industry and some of the research work that the institute's looked at. It was featured in the Facilitate magazine about tech. It's featured in many of our research and guidance. From your own perspective, how has that impacted clients' needs over the years?
Basic digital literacy used to be, I think, in certain respects, a nice to have, but now most definitely it's a prerequisite for the majority of jobs we recruit. Enhanced technology will lead to future jobs being created by employers, and certainly will increase demand in terms of training. And I think young people or less experienced people in the industry are probably quite attracted by the technology side. So it's very much a positive for the industry. And if you think, if we are going to have a hybrid working world, then it's ever so important, isn't it, really?
Yeah, and I just asked you a follow-up question to that, Peter. So bearing in mind the job market is geography no longer a barrier now as we move into hybrid working? So a job up in Leeds would not be off-putting for someone based in Southampton, for example. And apologies, I didn't use any other cities or towns of the UK, but from your point of view, is that now a barrier no longer as we work there, or is it still going to be a localized market? So Peter, I don't know if you heard the question.
So I've been hammering home this concept for the last 20 years. You hear me okay?
Yeah, I think you're okay. Yeah, keep going.
So I've been hammering home this concept for the last 20 years. And I loved the opportunity about 19 years ago when I got someone a job who was based in the Northeast, but the job was actually in London. And now we're actually seeing the reality of that situation becoming the fore. It's literally taking a whole load of salt and maybe shaking it across the whole country. I think it's a huge desperation of the jobs in the UK. I think that we'll see jobs popping up everywhere, where back in the day we probably saw 70% of them in London. So I think the idea of someone being based in Southampton, the job being in Leeds, is a very real one.
And does that resonate, Conrad, irrespective of your organisations? I'm not going to delve deeper into your own hybrid working policies with respectively at ISS and Mighty, but do you think that's something from your own personal perspective that's going to change? So that I appreciate, Conrad, you're in the office today, but is that going to be the norm that we would be seeing Conrad in the office 5 days a week?
I think it will be a mandated norm, but it would be, for me personally, preferred. I moved to London to get the London lifestyle, the flexibility, the sort of fun of living in the city. So if I was then told you can work from home every day, and I sort of lost out on that London social life, it doesn't suit me as a person. So I think ISS are being supportive in that, yeah, we're going to be flexible on where you want to work, but we're given the opportunity to come to either client offices, ISS offices, or work from home as well.
And Atia, I guess from your perspective, does that resonate from your own personal experience in terms of how you've been working and how you maybe continue to be working in as we look into a post-COVID world?
Yeah, I think Mighty as an organisation, like over the last 3 years, we're moving more towards the regional hub model and agile working anyways for all support services. And I sit within support services. I don't have a responsibility to open a building up, etc., make sure it's closed at the end of the day. So yeah, our whole team in terms of support service functions, etc., have all been working rather agilely over the last few years anyway. We haven't all been permanently office based. There There are some fractions, like within our team, for example, staff analyze data, work with the CAFM systems, etc., who have actually been able to work from home. That was something we didn't think was possible prior to the lockdown. So that's been quite interesting. But I think we will be seeing people come back into the office at least a few days. And we know that from the surveys, etc., that have been undertaken internally, and also things that we've been monitoring externally, that appears to be the way that people prefer to function in terms of the health and well-being benefits and productivity, is to have a nice split between office and the home environment. But similar to what Conrad touched on earlier, it depends on who you classify as an FM. So if you are a facility manager, our FMs who have been, responsible for offices, etc., they've been working throughout the lockdown, etc., and have been making sure that the buildings continue to run. So they will obviously continue to be in the offices. We have been able to move certain aspects of our responses to remote due to technology. So we have got remote centres, for example, that can do resets, etc., for alarm activations, etc. So we have been looking into that aspect, and that's a whole other area within Mitie, around connected workspace, etc., and remote fixing. But I think in terms of our actual FMs who run our buildings, etc., they will probably continue to be in the office.
That's great, and I guess this is the impact, as the backdrop of the survey was conducted in as we're looking at the hybrid working world, and I know many of our respective members and corporate members are still grappling what that actually looks like. Peter, if I can bring you in, and I'll bring it back to the pay and prospects. If I had to say that someone coming out of uni or someone that looking at the profession potentially as a career, how would you define, and it might be an unfair question, the opportunities within the profession? How would you really articulate that with your 20 plus years of experience recruiting purely in the FM industry? How would you table that? And I don't want to use an Americanism, but I guess it's that elevator pitch. If you had 2 minutes of convincing me this is the profession for you, how would you put that across? Is it around CBD? Is it salaries? Is it other benefits? What would be the hook there, or is it a multiple of things?
Yeah, it's the breadth, the diversity, the challenge, the opportunity, the change. On day one, you can deal with the CEO, but also the cleaner, front of house, security. The opportunity to deal with that breadth, as opposed to many of the industries, is, personally, I might be biased, but I think it's incredibly rare. And I think it's that personality shaping as well. As you grow your career within facilities management, you get the understanding of how to deal with people, and yeah, it's really the shaping, and no day is the same. I know it's been said many times before, but most of the FMs I've met throughout my career love the job, love the opportunity, and particularly in the world we live in now, I think there's a fantastic position to change things for the better.
So I guess you've mentioned the word diversity, and diversity in the sense of the role itself. And I know this is a hot topic from a media perspective, as well as pre-COVID as well, about diversity and inclusion. It's something for us at the Institute respectively. But I've got a question here about, no doubt inclusive culture is key. That's the obvious statement of this webinar. And we need to do better in making this a more inclusive industry. And I even touched upon the fact that 70% of the respondents were male. So yes, I'm male. I'm picking on my own. But the point is 70% were male. How can this be done, and what is being done now? So the question really is, how can we make this a more diverse and inclusive industry? And is there anything or good examples that needs to be done, or any good activity that's happening now? So Atia, from your experiences today, and obviously from your own background, we can see that from respectively, how's the challenge or opportunity been for you from a personal perspective? What you're seeing being done now that's good practice, but what would you like to be seen that as an industry we should be doing more of. So quite a bold telling statement and quite a lot of questions in there, but really from a personal perspective, it'd be good to get your take on the subject.
So in terms of like diversity inclusion, within my career, working in FM for like over 15 years, I actually feel the FM industry coming from construction was, you know, a breath of fresh air. And I'm really surprised that it's still quite male dominated, because in my experience, I've seen a lot of women in leadership positions. I've met a load of female FMs, people from diverse backgrounds as well, like really proud of the work that they do, and, you know, be able to progress in their careers as well. And I've actually been at a real advantage within the organizations I've worked in to have some really clear female leadership in front of me to kind of guide and allow me to learn from them as well. So I still find that really interesting. I'm surprised to see that and hear that about the FM industry, because I thought it would actually have been, you know, at least a 50-50 split, maybe, Peter, in terms of respondents. But again, it goes back to kind of Conrad, I think, mentioned earlier, in terms of, you know, it's about who's responded and who's taken the time to respond. In terms of what we could do to support the industry, I know, like Mighty as an organisation, we have a campaign around women and also around diversity and inclusion. So we have a campaign called Women Can, where we're showcasing female leaders within our organisation and encouraging them to network and mentor. So that's something that's consciously happening. And also the same goes for diversity groups as well. So we have mentoring and networking across our organisation for different diversity and BAME networks. And that's actually being championed by our chief executive, who's also mentoring someone as well. So I think that's a good way for an organisation to look internally and say, right, what can we do to resolve this issue? Because we know it's there. You know, even looking at our stats, there are gaps in leadership in very senior positions in the organisation, and we are targeting that as well through this approach.
No, thank you, Atia. And Conrad, from your experience, how's this continued challenge been? And just echoing Atia's point about the profession, what could we do more to overcome this challenge?
I think from what I've seen in kind of the 6 years of being with ISS is it's now become a normal conversation in our organisation. I think ISS has been great in internally pushing the stories, the sharing of best practice, the changing of leadership. So now we regularly talk about it. It isn't something that comes up once a year or once a month when suddenly it's an occasion. So I think a lot of young people coming in to ISS have just been, it's part of the job now, which I think has been really good. So hopefully we see sort of all other organizations and the industry doing that, and that it just becomes the normal for us. If I look at our senior leadership, there is a great split there now, and there is a very diverse executive team. So for us, I think for me in particular, I think every manager I've nearly had was a woman, and clients. So it's been normal for me, and I think a lot of people do say prior years it wasn't. So I'm glad that now I'm seeing the change that probably a lot of people spoke about for years.
No, thank you, Conrad. As you can see, I've put your questions, and we've been receiving questions through. And Peter, there's been a question directly for you, and I appreciate you're on the move again, so hopefully you can hear me. Thank you, David, for the question. He's said, how has the FM job market change been affected by the pandemic up until now, taking into account the change in work practices? So I think we touched upon this a little bit with hybrid working, and many businesses opting to close buildings, office space. Thank you. So, Peter, how has the industry from your perspective and world been impacted by the pandemic, and did this whole debate about offices no longer? What's your view? Have you seen a gradual change over the year plus 16 months? Peter, you're on mute, sorry. Hi.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Hi.
Did you get
so
the question?
23rd of
Sorry.
March,
Yeah, go ahead, Peter. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I heard it perfectly. So on the 23rd of March last year, it was like an atomic bomb going off, if I'm honest with you. And I sat for a week wondering what's going to happen, because a lot of the existing jobs obviously dried up. Fortuitously, throughout the year, things did pick up quite dramatically, actually. And we survived last year by recruiting a lot of sort of project managers, change managers. We helped 77 senior people back into senior jobs in the market. Come January the 2nd this year, it died off for a month. Obviously, we were locked in our homes again. But since March, I'm absolutely delighted to say it's picked up. I think the pandemic last year affected probably individuals who are maybe halfway down the food chain, because generally companies kept the senior people on the books, got them to do the hands-on tasks. And it was, the individual I've seen in the last 3 months going forward, it'll be a better situation.
Thank you, Peter. And I think we got most of that. So thank you again. I appreciate you've had connection issues today, but that was great. And we've got a good feedback, guys. We're doing okay. Great session and some very interesting insights. So thank you, Michael, for the question and the comments. His question is, as we see the impacts of the pandemic on property portfolios, do you feel individuals should think more about workplace in its multiple forms as opposed to pure traditional FM when looking for future roles? So I think, Conrad, that tied in with that question I mentioned in the very top level feedback about how would you define your role in terms of enabling workplaces, for example. Do you see a massive shift in the role in terms of what the questionnaires querying there, or not?
I think I've always said to people who are going for roles, sort of interview your skill set and not necessarily the role, because if you're not fit for that role, a recruiter like Peter might say, actually, I've got another role that would be a great suit for you. And I think the workplace is changing and it requires a lot of different skill sets. So being traditional, I don't think is there anymore. I think in my current role, I'm trying to reach out into many avenues and different streams because I want to use my skill set in different ways. So I would recommend to people who are going for roles, yes, if you're focusing on the traditional type, make sure a recruiting manager knows the variety of skills you have and how they can be utilized in other parts of the business or a building so they can see what you can bring to the table.
Yeah, I think that's entirely right. Ati, is there anything to add on that? Do you see that shift echoing Conrad's comments?
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. From a sustainability perspective, yes, we're working with a lot of customers on their net zero programs. So there's not just this shift to hybrid type working due to the impact of the pandemic, but actually I feel personally, it's actually pushing along the future a lot sooner. And we would have actually headed in this direction anyway, in order to combat, global emissions and climate change. So I do feel there's going to be less reliance on, office-based people sat at a desk, etc. And definitely we will see more agile working in the future. In terms of an impact to an FM's role, just the workplace environment perhaps will be slightly different in terms of what they manage. There is going to be more connectivity, etc. And we will have more people working from home more. And that brings along a range of other issues for employers as well in terms of HR and well-being and managing employees whilst working at home as well. So I do think there is, though the actual office spaces may restrict in the future, there are other professions and other skill sets that we would need within our industry to support that.
Now, I've got time for a couple more questions, and the person's kept this anonymous, so it might be the nature of the questions, so I appreciate. Is it now time to outsource facilities and property management from an in-house model to a total of integrated FM model? So I guess it's that whole debate about business transformation and the role of FM and its services. Has anyone got a particular view on that? Ati, I know you were nodding your head. Is there anything you concur on that, or is that respectively dependent on the organisation?
Yeah, I would say yes, get in touch with us because we're a provider. Yeah, something that Mighty have been doing over the last few years is, as part of our transformation plan, has been looking at what the future of FM and our customers' requirements would be. And as a result of that, we've been growing in different areas, and sustainability is one. So I'm very excited to be part of a growing team within sustainability for, I think, the first time in 10 years within my career. We're usually a team that's cut back, but this is the first time we're seeing a lot of growth in sustainability and carbon and energy management. So yeah, outsourcing providers, it's a lot more than just opening your building and closing it. And we're working to ensure that we can have the right skills and intelligence to support our customers for the future.
No, I'm very diplomatically put at you, but great from that perspective. Conrad, anything to add, obviously, to give ISS a platform here, but respectively, there are other service providers available at here as well. But from that point of view, I guess, joking aside, I guess it is that business transformation that a lot of companies up and down the country are looking at as we look for 2022, and possibly, without being an economist, the true impact of COVID and possibly the other market force of Brexit that's really going to come to the fore. So any views on that, Conrad, that's coming on the question around, I guess I'll table it, different business transformation and different options for FM.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what Adi has said. I think for me, there's nothing better than when you see in the Facilitate magazine or online that a large corporation has partnered with an FM company. Because when I see something like that, I'm saying that that's an organization who's trusting an FM company, whether it's ISS, CBRE, Mighty, that they will deliver services to allow that organization to do what they need to do. And I think whether it's ISS and our new One ISS strategy, we're focusing on what we do really well. And we're making sure that when we deliver to a client, we're delivering those aspects extremely well. Workplace design, workplace experience, that's what we do. That's what we research. That's what we trial. That's what we invest in. So I think now is the time for organizations to start expanding out into outsourcing models.
No, that's great. Now, I'm aware of time and we've had a couple of questions through, but I want to just do a nice rounded question and bring it back to the pay and prospects, really, which we went through the results, we touched on, but even in this panel debate, the subjects and areas that make this so diverse and such an intriguing sector to work in. But I guess it's tying in with the question I asked Peter earlier in respect to that elevator pitch or lift pitch, but elevator sounds better, really. If you had to summarize, and I will go with Peter first, how you would describe the profession and why it's so exciting to be part of, and what drives you on a daily basis. So again, bringing it personally back to yourselves, what's your drive? And we talk about prospects. Where do you see yourself? So Peter, I guess it's a similar question to earlier, but I think it's a nice ending question really to bring it back, not necessarily about the pay, because that's in the report and could be looked at, but the prospects in the profession that we all work in.
So really diversity, change, opportunity creation, ability to professionally develop yourself, get involved with technology, get involved with a diversity range of different duties, health and safety, procurement, management. There's not many of the professions where you can do all of that.
No, thank you, Peter. And Atia, if I come to you, how would you, just some closing remarks about the, just to repeat the question, describe the profession and what drives you and your prospects moving forward? So
I think, yeah, exactly like what Peter mentioned, all of those, it is very diverse. And for me, in terms of sustainability, the excitement is getting to work with customers and with our business in a range of different environments and areas that you wouldn't really have exposure to. So whether that's the public or private sector, whether it's a power station or, you know, a biscuit factory, etc., it really is that varied and exciting.
And last but not least, Conrad, anything to add from your own perspective?
Yeah, I think the next few years are going to be extremely exciting, and it's a great position to come into the industry now. I don't know where I'll be next year, 2 years, 3 years. I know I want to end up in Ireland. That's the goal. But I think not knowing is the exciting piece, because the industry is changing that much. I may look and say, actually, that area excites me, or that now excites me, and see where I can bring benefit. So the waking up every day and knowing not what's not going to be in front of you, I think it excites me.
No, thank you. And at this point, I want to say a massive thank you to Attia, Peter and Conrad, because I got a cool time. I think we could have had another hour on this. And Peter, I'm loving the tour of where you are at the moment. And that is literally doing a webinar on the go, proving it's live. But most importantly, we've heard your great responses to the questions and your views today. So thank you to Peter, Attia and Conrad. And I've just got a couple more closing slides to go through. But thank you again on such an interesting topic. And as I say, we could have gone on for another hour, but time is against us. So thank you again. So I've just got a couple of ending slides just to let the audience know, and be patient as I just move across. I just wanted to say, this is where the report that I've gone through very top level today gave you some snippets from it. The report is a lot more comprehensive than what I've highlighted today. Again, I could have done a whole episode on the report in its entirety, but it was important to have some feedback from individuals today. So this is housed on our Insight Hub. It's available there to download for members, non-members. So please have a look at the report itself. This is where you'll find dedicated content hubs, research reports, good practice guides and guidance notes. So please go onto the website. There's a wealth of information there for you. Coming up very thick and fast, 13th of September, our Emerging Stronger conference. All our speakers have now been announced, tackling some of the themes we've tackled today on today's episode very briefly, admittedly because of time, but areas such as sustainability, climate change, the role of technology are just two key pillars that we're focusing on at the conference. We have a great lineup of speakers. The program's available. Tickets are available. Yes, it is a hybrid event, both virtual and physical, just to make it clear. So please join us on that. That'd be great. And lastly, I just want to say a massive thank you to the panelists again for joining us today, particularly Peter, and thank you for Peter's perseverance with his technology issues today, and hopefully audience, his views and opinions came across okay in terms of sound quality. This was episode 54 of the Navigating Turbulent Times series. Episode 55 will be happening next Wednesday, announced on Friday. So I just want to say massive thank you for joining us today. Have a look at the Pay and Prospects report. There is a survey, just to be short, sent after you, just to give us feedback on today's webinar, but also what you'd like to see out of future episodes. And I think there was a lot of content in today's that we could have delved a lot more deeper into. So maybe there's some nuggets to help you there to fill the survey in. So once again, thank you audience for joining us on the hour. As I said, it could have gone on for longer, but I'm afraid time is against us. But look forward to seeing you on another future episode of NTT. And thank you once again. Take care.